To wrap up this course, I just want to talk a little bit about word study and the principles that surround word study and the practices of using word study when we're teaching reading to our students. So, what word study really is that compare and contrast. So, it's a focused contrast. And it really is a process where we're contrasting words by their sound, their pattern, or their meaning, and then sorting them into some type of category. And that's the heart of word study. And so when we do these word studies or these contrasts, they need to be focused. And what we mean by focused is it's a set of deliberately targeted features. So we're really looking at certain features of words and ways to categorize them. And then making contrast is that way that we begin to categorize these into some type of word sort. So when we're teaching word knowledge through sorting, we're using activities where we have kids actively engaged in sorting words. And word sorting is a constructivist learning, but it's also direct instruction. So even though students are constructing their categories and really kind of doing these things on their own by what they notice, it's also very direct instruction because it's very focused and the teacher has arranged for these word studies. And so when we do that, we begin by identifying that focus. And then we make sure that we stack the deck with the words that can fit into those contrasts that we have them looking for. And that could be by sound, pattern, or meaning. So the central goal then of a word study is number one, teach students how to spell, how to decode new words, and how to improve their word recognition and their writing. And we're going to do that by having students examine words and talk about the regularities that they see in the spelling system of those words, those patterns that they see. Picture sorts and word sorts are designed to help students learn how and where to look at and listen to certain words, to engage in productive talk that surrounds these activities that we're having them do, and for them to sort of form generalizations about how words are spelled and how the spelling system works, and how that spelling system then informs pronunciations and meanings. And for the little we's, we may be doing picture sorts for sounds, beginning sounds. So we kind of do that a lot, but this is taking things a little step further. So here's a pattern sort where Mrs. Zimmerman in her class has the kids listening to the sound of air, as in care and share and chair and pair and bear. So the sound is there, but she has them looking for the pattern, the ARE, the AIR, and the EAR. And let's talk about that EAR. In this instance, that is an irregularity. And you should throw an irregularity in there every once in a while, because in other cases, EAR does not sound like air, it sounds different. So it's always good to put those sort of exception words in there. 1, 2 at the most. So how does word study differ from phonics? Well, it differs in the fact that the students are manipulating and they're seeing things. We're having them focus on what things look like. We're having them say it. We're having them write it as they're learning at the same time to spell them. So it's sort of a multi-sensory process of sort of feeling where sounds are made in the mouth while pronouncing words and looking at these patterns. And this, for children with dyslexia, many of your Orton Gillingham type programs do that. They do mouth positions, teeth, tongue, They use multisensory approaches. So this is just good stuff for all kids and definitely for our struggling readers. So it's building in that kinesthetic tactile awareness um, as well, so that we're having that multisensory approach. So think about this. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And that's sort of the basis of what we're doing here. Word sorts help us and helps our students learn by actually doing. So we're going to work with words, or we're going to work with names of pictures that students can already pronounce, right? So they bring their subconscious understanding to a more explicit awareness facilitated by the teacher. So if the student can't first name the words, then those words are not good for our word sorts. So learning to spell involves associating the spelling of words with their pronunciations. And to discuss the meaning of words before, during, and after sorting with them is also a really important piece in word sorts and word study. So what's happening at the time? We're doing both analytical and synthetical phonics. Okay, so we're using two different approaches. So one, students are directly taught letter sound correspondences in both of those, the analytic and the synthetic phonics approaches. When we categorize words, that's an analytic approach. And when we're doing that analytic approach, we're going to use words that they know. We're going to have students examine word parts, listening for the different sounds, looking for spelling patterns that go with them, and thinking about what the words mean. So the word study involves both an analytic and a synthetic phonics approach, because they are still listening for speech sounds and spellings and letter associations as well. So most other phonics programs take a more synthetic approach, and those are students are taught the letter sound correspondence. They sound out words by phoneme, and they can make reading tedious if the meaning of the words is totally unknown. So in the approach where we're using both analytical and synthetic, we're building in the meaning as well. So straight up phonics is more of a synthetic approach. A word study is both synthetic and analytic. So during sorting, students will determine the similarities and differences in that collection of words that you've put together. They're going to have to use higher level critical thinking to make those categorical judgments. Where does this word go? Which category does it fit into? So the simplicity of sorting routines makes it easier to differentiate instruction among your group of learners. So thinking about that too, if you have kids who are at a more pictorial level, you can do that. Or kids who are reading words, you can do it that way as well. Sorting is really adaptable, and the process of categorizing word features by those different contrasts that we're doing by sound, pattern, or meaning, it lends itself to cooperative learning, and that's what we can do. We can put them in our small groups. So this is really, really good in our tier 2 type of instructions. So some other phonics programs, sorry, went the wrong way. The types of sorts that kids do, again, I alluded to before, were sound, pattern, and meaning. So the types of sorts will address how that alphabet reflects speech sounds and how spelling patterns reflect both sound and meaning. So let's take these apart a little bit. So let's look at sound contrast. So if we're sorting by sound, at different points in development, students are going to be able to sort words or pictures by rhyme. So we think about our onset and our rhyme, by initial sounds, by consonant blends or diagraphs, by rhyming word families or vowel sounds. Now, that sounds like our sort of traditional way of teaching phonics, right? We have them listen to rhyming words. We have them finding initial letters, consonant sounds, and then word families, vowel sounds. So that's your typical phonics approach. Pictures are naturally suited for sound sorts. So when we're doing sound sorts, students can sort each picture. They have to pay attention to the individual speech sound or phonemes. So a lot of times, sort all the pictures that start with the letter B or letter D or the sound C. Pictures are suited for students who are still in that process of developing phonemic awareness and they don't have more extensive reading vocabularies. So we think about that. We see that a lot in kindergarten and into first grade. When we move into the second type of sort, which is the pattern contrast, this is where we're now using the printed form of the word. And the kids are starting to sort by spelling patterns or letter sequencing, such as the ARE, in AIR, and the EAR in that Mrs. Zimmerman sort. So letter name alphabetic spellers sort words into word families. So a lot of times we'll just sort them like all the AN words, all the IG words, all the ET words, whatever our little word families are that we're doing. They can sort by closed syllables, which is consonant, vowel, consonant. Phonograms, such as hat, rat, pat, versus ran, fan, tan. The pattern contrast happens when our students are within word pattern stage sorts. So they see vowel patterns, wait, train, so all the AI kind of things, the A, consonant, E. So we're looking at these vowel patterns. More advanced spellers can sort by the pattern of consonants as well. So you might see vowels in the middle of the word at the syllable juncture, such as button, pillow, ribbon, versus window, public, basket. So in the first one, you have your double consonant. In the second set, you have two consonants together. Patterns of constancy and change, when we're looking at them from a derivational way of analyzing our words, such as divine and divinity, or mental and mentality. So being able to sort that way. So it can get pretty complex. And you can take kids up to a much higher level by doing these sorts and help them develop meaning and patterns and spelling. And it's the whole approach. So they're useful for students who have a functional sight word or reading vocabulary. And the key words containing the pattern under the study have to be maybe underlined or bolded to label each category. So underlining the AIR in Mrs. Zimmerman's, or the EAR or the ARE. So underlining them or bolding them in some way so that the kids know how to sort underneath that. And then the students are going to categorize the word cards by matching that spelling pattern that they see. And you're usually putting like a keyword at the top of the column. And the headers are used to highlight the spelling pattern. Then you get into the more complex contrast that we look at, and that is the meaning contrast. So in this conceptual sort, we're really looking at sorting by meaning. So grouping objects, pictures, or words by similar concepts or meanings. These are appropriate for all ages and stages of word knowledge and can be most useful, I think, in your content areas. So pictures of mammals, mathematical formulas, geometric shapes, or social studies vocabulary words all can be sorted for greater understanding. And as a writing tool, they can be used to organize ideas. So concept sorts are even useful for teaching grammar when words are sorted by the parts of speech, nouns, verbs, adjectives, things of that nature. So in a concept sort, you're going to use concepts for assessing and building background knowledge. before you maybe start a new unit of study. So, for example, a science unit on states of matter might begin with categorizing words into groups that go together. Um, Steam, wood, air, ice, cube, rain, metal, glue, paint, plastic, smoke, milk, and fog. How might you categorize those? And then discussing the reasons behind how the kids created their conceptual grouping. And then you revisit the sort as the unit progresses to review and assess core concepts and vocabulary. So you do this in the beginning before you start the unit, and you do it at the end too. Concept sorts are effective for dealing with new words in novels. So if you're using a novel, you might use a concept sort there as well. Spelling meaning contrast. Meaning influences the spelling of words. So you have words that sound alike, a homophone. So you might do something like buy and buy, so by and buy, or two and two. So this is where spelling and meaning contrast need to come together. So homographs are words that are spelled the same but pronounced differently depending on a part of speech. So record or record, read or read, bow or bow. And I want you to pay attention to these homophones, homographs, because you're going to see this on your final exam as well. When we're doing a spelling meaning contrast and using derivational relationships, we might have them sort words by similarities in their roots and their stems. So let's take, for example, spect. You can sort it by spectator, spectacle, inspect, and spectacular. Port, transport, import, portable, and port-o-john. And you can see that they're related too. So then having them sort that and then talking about how are they related. Sort by word endings that signal grammatical parts of speech. So educate and dictate is a verb, but education and dictation is a noun. And educator and dictator is a noun person. So you want to discuss these slight changes in meaning and use. And then the students can usually then generalize spelling. So what does a word study lesson plan look like? So let's talk about the parts of a word study lesson plan. The word study lesson follows a gradual release model, or even the I do, we do, you do kind of model, right? So it begins with the teacher modeling and explicit explanations. And then we move to that guided practice and we proceed to independent application. So remember I talked about word studies doing both a constructivist approach and a direct instruction approach. So this is the way that works. So it's a gradual release model. So you've got that direct and explicit instruction in there, but still students are engaged in constructing things. So each week the students get a new set of words, and the teacher's going to be the one who decides how to best introduce those words. And then students are led to form generalizations about how the contrasted features work. And introductory lessons can be teacher-directed sorts, so you can have the teacher directing a sort, student-centered sorts, or done independently or in buddies or pairs. And then you will be selecting the level of support. 1, how familiar students are with categorizing words according to whatever your focus is, your focus contrast, whether a new feature is being introduced, the amount of time available for sorting, reflecting, and discussing, or how well students can work independently. And all of those are going to lead to your determination of how much support the students need. So if you look at a continuum of support for word studies, here would be a novice sorter, and this is a more experienced sorter. All right, and for the novice sorter, we're usually introducing new features, or in the experienced sorter, we're looking to assess. And then we can have a teacher-directed, closed sort, or teacher-directed guess my category. So it gives you a rundown of how a lesson might look. Um, and so I think this is a good little slide for you to see what you might do. Read through the words, talk about any that are unfamiliar, set up the categories with keywords, but do not describe the features, whereas that's a teacher-directed guess my category. But here would be read through all the words and talk about any that students might not know, introduce each category with a header, so you can see how it contrasts those. And over here, we're really looking at student-centered closed sorts or student-centered open sorts. So in a closed sort, they get their own set of words with keywords and or headers. In an open sort, get their own set of words and there are no keywords or no headers. So you can see that there's some more structure to a closed sort than there is with an open sort, but kind of gives you a good idea of what that looks like. So when we're looking at teacher-directed closed sorts, right? So we're giving them categories. Typically, there's a high level of support, direct instruction, where you're defining the focus contrast and making it clear how to conduct the sort, explicit introduction of keywords and setting up the headers. You're going to model several words. You're going to release to the students to complete the sort eventually. And then the 4 components of the lesson plan is introduce the sort, guide the reflection, resort and check, and then extend. So those are the 4 components. Again, you may see that on your exam. So a teacher-directed closed sort, you're going to introduce the words, explore meanings, you're going to establish the categories, use open-ended questions to help the students focus, like what did you notice? What do your eyes and ears tell you about the words? How might we sort these words? And then if needed, define those categories for them. In part 3 of the lesson, model how to sort several words and explain why. So we're going to listen for the vowel sound in the middle of these words and decide whether they sound like the short A sound in the middle of a map or like the short U sound in the middle of duck. I'll do a few first. And then here is rug, rug, ugh, Notice how I peel off the sounds before and after the vowel to make it easier to hear the vowel in the middle. So these are the things that the teacher would be saying and doing. In step 4, you would then model how to sort several words and explain why. And you're going to display the rest of the pictures or words, and students are going to put them in the category. And then if a mistake is made, you correct it immediately and tell them where it goes. Now, in these closed sorts, the teacher has to guide the reflection, right? So we can begin with open-ended questions and take responses from the students. What do you notice? Anyone else have an idea? How are the words alike? What else? How do you put these words together? And then you're going to focus the attention on the sound, the pattern, or the meaning, whatever your focus sort is. How are the sounds in these words alike? What kind of pattern do you notice? How have we seen this pattern before? Are any of these words similar in meaning? And then talking about it. So position, ask students to reflect on where certain patterns occur within the word or the frequency. Word hunts reveal that words ending in ER are much more common than words ending in OR or AR. So what is more frequent? Talk about that. Related words, reflecting on related words is the way that we extend for students and give them greater insights into other words. And that's really a major goal of word study. And then 4, they reach conclusions. So ask students to verbally declare and discuss their understanding about the sound, the pattern, or the meaning that you're doing. The next step we talked about in that lesson plan is the resort and recheck. So ideally right after the discussion, or when time allows you to do it, you're going to ask students to resort the words. You can leave out the headers and the keywords and scramble the rest and turn them face down in a pile. And then during the second repeated sort, do not correct your students. But when they are through, Have them name the words or pictures in each column to check the sort. And when students make mistakes, finding out why they sorted a picture or a word in a particular way is going to be useful for you. So instead of correcting, let them sort and then, talk about it and figure out why they did what they did. And then to extend it. So extensions consist of activities to reinforce and apply what they're learned after the group demonstration, after the sorting activity, and after the reflection. So when we're doing extensions, we have them participate in activities at either centers or with partners or seat work or for homework, and continue to sort multiple times, individually or with a partner. Hunt for similar words in their book. Draw label pictures. Add to word charts. Complete word study notebooks. Write words and play games. So different activities that you're doing that kind of extend what you did, but moving away from teacher directed into more independent or partnering with other peers. So if you're looking at an open sort, a guess my category, then you're going to use a variation of that teacher-directed sort. You're going to review the words, set up keywords or pictures as an enclosed sort, but do not offer any explanation of those categories. In an open sort, you kind of give them a handout, has no headers or keywords. You ask the students to read over the words, and you ask them to create their own categories, and then to go ahead and compare their categories with a partner or a peer, and come up with their own generalizations. So then you bring the kids back together to talk about meanings of any unfamiliar words that they don't know. And again, review their sorts and ask them what they noticed about the words and what conclusions they were able to reach on their own without you. So teacher talk and student reflection. This little chart gives you some ideas for problem solving, reflection, application, and transfer. So what did you notice about these words? Remember to use your ears and your eyes as you examine them. That's problem solving. In reflection, what can you tell us about these words now that we have sorted them? How are they alike? In application and transfer, let's go back to these words we were not sure about earlier. Can we read them now? Can we figure out what they mean? In the second row, you have how are these words alike? How are they different from this set over here? Tell us more. That's problem solving. Why do you put these words here? That's reflection. And then what if we change that prefix to another prefix? Would the word what would the word mean then if we did that? So different ways of asking questions depending on what you want to do. So principles of word study instruction. This is our final slide. Look for what students use but confuse. A step backward is a step forward. So we may go back because they're, confused by something. So we might take a step back, engage in these activities so that we can move the kids forward. So use words students can read, compare words that do with words that don't. Begin with obvious contrast, sort by sound and pattern. Don't hide exceptions. That oddball character like bear in the example that we had in the beginning of the slideshow. Avoid rules because, let's face it, the rules are always broken in some way. No rule is steadfast. There's too many exceptions in our English language. Work for fluency, getting the kids to be more familiar with the words or more familiar with those patterns so that they can decode words faster. Encourage and participate in the student talk and return to meaningful text. So going back then and applying this in your text. So that's the principles of word study instruction. Again, these are great activities for Tier 2 kids. They're great activities for fillers, for when you're maybe pulling and working with small groups, but they just reinforce so much and they integrate that whole idea of spelling, reading, meaning, writing as an integrated approach.